Hare Krishna. Jai. Welcome to Krishna Book Part 3, class number 11. We're picking up where Krishna and Balaram meet the residents of Vrindavan after a long separation. And we will begin with Sri Harinam Sankirtan.
Okay, Haribol, I'm gonna mute. Okay, so come into a comfortable seat. Come into a comfortable seat. Let's take a clearing breath together to just shift from whatever we were doing to being here now together. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Sip it in, sip it in, sip it in. Open your mouth. We start with our opening prayers. Bringing our consciousness, our attention, our intention to a mood of humility, of receptivity, and gratitude. Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nam Sankirtan Ki, Shastra Study Group Ki, Vermont Bhakti Asang Edmiyang Ki, Hari Hari Bol, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bol.
Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Krishna Book Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So let's have, I think we have a lot of reading today. So this is a chunky section, so we're not going to have as many reflections to start us off, but let's have at least one. Anything that you heard that stuck out? We read about Krishna visiting the residents. Well, he hasn't actually spoken to them yet, but they've gone to Kurukshetra. We read the meeting of Krishna with Sudama Brahman. Yeah, that whole pastime. How Krishna reciprocated with Sudama's sincerity. Yes, Pam.
I have a question from chapter 80. There's a part that says there's two kinds of transcendentalists, namely the impersonalist and the personalist.
Right.
And that the impersonalists, they were talking about being morose, and that the impersonalists will remain morose. I wasn't sure what personalist and impersonalist, what that meant.
Yeah, good question. This is described in the Bhagavad Gita. It's described in several chapters, 7, 9, and 12, notably. And so the idea is that if in one's spiritual practice, one's ultimate goal is abstract, the totality of everything, the universe, oneness, that's an aspect of Krishna. But it's an aspect of Krishna that doesn't actually, either because of ignorance or because of aversion, doesn't actually acknowledge his personality. On the other hand, one's spiritual practice may actually have an end goal of personality, the person of Krishna in any of his divine forms, personally reciprocating with us, receiving our prayers. After all, praying requires a prayer and a prayee. Krishna is the person who's receiving the prayer. It's a personal process. And so what Krishna is saying, or I don't remember the context of that particular statement, it's Prabhupada, I think, saying it, but if you want to reiterate for us, you can, what is actually said. But it's a very, very much a common theme in this literature, the Bhakti literature, is that, as Krishna directly says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, any spiritual practice that doesn't have an end goal which is personal is troublesome. It creates problems because it doesn't actually engage the heart, ultimately. It leaves one in kind of a halfway, like a limbo, where one recognizes that they're not matter. I'm not this body. I'm not this material mind. I'm not the products of these modes of nature. And yet, usually due to a lack of knowledge, there is an inability to actually function on the spiritual level as a person, to act in service with spiritual senses for a spiritual recipient of service, the Supreme Person. And because of that, there's a lack of transcendental joy. And so that's what Prabhupada is speaking about, that ultimately there's moroseness, and therefore one can fall from that position, usually by becoming distracted again by the material energy, by the material world, because for all of its faults, it has relationships, even if they are material and temporary and transient and illusory in so many ways. If one doesn't have a higher relationship, one will just give up their spiritual practice for the lower relationships of material life. Therefore, bhakti is in whatever tradition you find it, in whatever language, bhakti is itself the pinnacle of spiritual achievement. It's personal connection with the personal divine. Does that help?
That helps, yeah.
Yeah, it's deep. For more.
It's deep. Well, and I kind of thought, did it mean, because when I was in India last year with my friend Gopi, she said to me that when we were having a discussion about Krishna consciousness, she said that one difference between our religion is that we have a person, Krishna, instead of just God as
an abstract.
Right. And that's kind of what I thought maybe that was leaning towards.
Yeah, I mean, all bhakti traditions are personal, but some are more, like they say, love is in the details.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to love somebody without knowing who they are, without knowing what they look like, what their activities are, what their qualities, pastimes, paraphernalia, friends, likes, dislikes, personhood. And so the more you have of that, the more fortunate you become and more supported in developing that love. Yeah. Is that Gopi from Kansas City?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's a good one.
She is a good one.
I really appreciate her.
Yes, I've known her for many, many years. So yeah.
Yeah. Great. Give her
I
my
will next time I go.
love
I
next time
just
we
saw
talk.
her in Kansas a few weeks ago, but I'll
Wonderful.
go back to see her a lot,
Great.
hopefully. All right,
Our
thank
temple
you.
president in Denver, Tushta, he became a devotee by the love and care of Gopi Mata in Kansas. So
Really?
he's like a
That's
grandmother for me because he's been like a father in many ways.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's amazing. If you ever get to Kansas, go to her farm there. It's
100%,
it's lovely.
100%. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Any
you.
other quick reflections before we jump into chapter 82? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going for it. Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshamam Krishna 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 Pahimam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam Jai Krishna Book Ki Jai. So we're picking up, if I'm not mistaken, from the paragraph that begins when Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present. Does that sound right? Yeah. When Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse and that all the members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherd men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. When the cowherd men of Vrindavana arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavan, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vrindavan residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vasudeva saw Nanda Maharaj, Vasudeva jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him very affectionately. Vasudeva began to narrate his own past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen Yashoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, and then they offered their respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Krishna and Balaram became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balaram, King Nanda and Yashoda had been merged in great distress for a very long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated. Then Krishna's mother, Devaki, and Balaram's mother, Rohini, both embraced Mother Yashoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yashoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us. And when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior toward us. When Krishna and Balaram were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as birds take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit. Actually, they are not our sons, they belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balaram. As long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position. The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others, and there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you. As far as the gopis of Vrindavan were concerned, From the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids, which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts, through their eyes, and embraced him to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis, constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated the embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with Mother Yashoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini. But when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balaram and I left Vrindavan just to please our relatives and family members. Thus we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us, although we had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously? After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He causes the intermingling of different persons and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust or broken pieces of cotton, and after the strong wind subsides, all the clouds, particles of dust, and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects we see are different manifestations of his energy. By his supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that we are absolutely dependent on his will. Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotional affection for me certainly at the end goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation. My dear Gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take for example an earthen pot. It is nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire, and sky. It is always of the same physical composition, whether in its beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but a different manifestation of my energy. And because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything. In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the 5 elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his imprisonment in material existence. As to supreme absolute truth, I am transcendental to the living entity as well as to his material embodiment. The 2 energies, material and spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that, instead of being afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another. This important instruction by Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he is present everywhere in his impersonal feature. Everything exists in him, but still he is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy. And because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separate from Krishna, then they can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts themselves in the position of enjoyer in the material world, and being thus implicated in material entanglement is forced by the material energy to continue their material existence. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, they falsely think that they are the all in all and the supreme enjoyer. If the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa Vigraha or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple is exactly the same Satchit Ananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then their service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similar to the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia and the food offered to the deity are not also separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible even in this material existence. The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness, and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents themselves as the enjoyer of the material world is called jiva kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from the jiva kosha imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. They utilize everything for Krishna's service and are not at any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower, which is the birth site of Brahma, the creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remain always a mystery even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. However, the conditioned souls fallen in the dark well of this material existence can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus their deliverance is guaranteed." The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction." The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be entangled in household affairs in Vrindavan. Because of their separation from Krishna, he might have asked them to return with him to his capital city, Dvarka. But the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dvarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. This transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. The Ratha Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dvarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavan, and the gopis and other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Shri Krishna Book Ki Jai. All right. Any reflections on that wonderful chapter? The greeting of Nanda, Yashoda, and Devaki and Vasudeva, Krishna's foster parents in Vrindavan and Krishna's birth parents, and then the special position of the gopis, serving Krishna in separation, embracing him in their hearts, and his instructions. Yes, Allison.
I just thought that tied in so beautifully to Pam's question, because you could just become in love with him, seeing him with his parents, and just as
Yeah.
a mother myself, that feeling, and then him going back to the gopis, it just, you could just see how it becomes so personal. I felt like it was perfect
Yeah.
timing.
This is the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is a description of Krishna's pastimes with his servants, friends, parents, lovers. And just hearing about these pastimes is non-different from being in them. We're actually associating with those persons. We're actually tasting that love. And by that, we're falling in love with them. It's a very personal path. And this Bhagavatam is so appreciated by the devotees because it is a treasure of Krishna's personal activities. And we can see here how this 10th canto is really the crown jewel because it's Krishna in his sweetest, most intimate pastimes, really one after the other.
You could really feel it
Yeah.
for sure.
They're so sweet. Even the other devotees who are also in a relationship with Krishna are celebrating, like Devaki and Vasudeva, who are his parents. by, they gave birth to him. They didn't raise him, but they're glorifying Yashoda and Nanda, saying, actually, you're the real parents because you took care of them with so much love. They had never anything to worry about. We had to let them go because they were in danger from Kamsa, but you have the real privilege of being parents. And so, yeah, there's this like mutual appreciation that's always going on, even though they have their own relationship. But when faced with the relationship of others, they're very much overwhelmed with the beauty of it, as we are by reading.
I really like the vision of Krishna and Balaram sitting on their parents' laps.
Yeah, they're grown men now.
Yeah.
Krishna is, after so many chapters of, you know, taking down the demons one after the other, he's stunned. Him and his brother are stunned and they can't talk. And then they're like sitting on their parents' lap, just like you can imagine Yashoda just bathing them in her tears after all these years of separation.
Mm.
They're just like overwhelmed with that love of their parents. And now, of course, he's taking the gopis aside and he's reciprocating somehow, trying to reciprocate with their very intense, the pinnacle of the love for Krishna is the love of the gopis. So it's quite the scene.
I love when they say that they're upset that Brahman created eyelids,
Yeah.
so that even for that second, that moment, they can't see him because they have to blink their eye.
Yeah, that was them in Vrindavan. When they were
Yeah.
looking at him, and it was described, even the deer and cows used to stare at Krishna. And the gopis were like, oh, Brahma must be an idiot. What is he thinking with eyelids? Must
It's
not
just
be
so
very
funny.
smart because like they just want to just drink him in.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, but it's also so sweet.
It's really sweet.
So
If you ever, you know, one thing I was told by a really sweet, very experienced devotee is that nobody in life can actually absorb your love like Krishna. Like you try going up to anybody and stare at them. And after a while, it's like, hey, like back off. That's enough, right? But you could just go up to the deity and you could just stare at him and give everything and just never blink. And Krishna will just, I got it. I can take all of that. I can reciprocate with every iota of your love. And, Mahaprabhu, Gauranitai, Jagannath, he'll stare back with his big, big eyes. Radha Krishna, they'll never stop. And you can read forever, you can chant forever. He can take all that love, and only he can do that. So this whole scene is like it's comic, but it's also, yeah, you're right. It's very, very sweet because Krishna is actually, he deserves that. He actually can handle all that love, and nobody else can. After a while, it's like, okay, you know what? Back off, because we're not God. And he is. You're all attractive. All right, let's jump into
Just one
83.
quick question.
Yeah.
So Krishna doesn't ever physically go back to Vrindavan anymore after he goes to Dwarka. Is that
He
correct?
does. It's not in the Bhagavatam. It's mentioned obliquely. It's mentioned indirectly. And Jiva Goswami gives evidence in his Sandarbhas that Krishna does in fact go eventually.
Okay, but when we talk about the Rath Yatra and bringing Krishna back, it's really just bringing his spirit back and
Well, in a way, he never
the
leaves because
the deity's back. Yeah.
yeah, in a way, he never leaves because as Prabhupada ended this chapter by saying, the love of the residents of Vrindavan is so pure that Krishna is inextricably bound to them. And the thing about this Rath Yatra and this moment of Kurukshetra is that it's the moment where their love for Krishna was at its deepest because they're seeing him after so many years, and here he is, but it's also not him because like there's all this formality and opulence and entourage and jewelry and queens and princes and children and all this responsibility. And they just want to like take him away and come back to the bank of the Yamuna and dance and sing and play the flute, right? And they kind of can't. And so that love is actually at its most fever pitch. But that's not to say that Krishna never actually goes back to Vrindavan, because in a sense he's really always there, because that love is the most attractive thing to him. But yeah, for the purposes of Leela, he's away for a very, very, very long time, like 100 years, really.
Can I ask a little question too? And you don't have to answer it but why is Subhadra, so we have the deities of Jagannath and Baladev and Subhadra are kind of like the middle of, in our temple. And like, we hear so much about Krishna and Balaram. We hear everybody embracing and everybody getting together. Where's Subhadra?
Yeah, her pastimes aren't mentioned as much because she wasn't in Vrindavan with them. She heard about it later, She actually marries Arjuna. We heard that. She has some pastimes. Her pastimes are mentioned in other places, and she's also the Shakti of the Lord. So she's, as is like typical of the Shakti of the Lord, she likes to see, like Radharani, as far as Krishna is concerned, she's more important than he is. But as far as she's concerned, like there's a reason why this is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not the Society for Radha Krishna Consciousness, because that's what she wants. She wants him front and center. So my only take on Subhadra is that somehow or other she's, facilitating things and in a supportive role, but putting Krishna and Balaram in the front seat. And the Leela, she's also the younger sister, so there's a little bit of seniority. They're kind of more like front and center. And that's all I can say about that. Yeah.
Was she born to Devaki?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Was it Devaki? Was it Vasudeva with a different wife? I don't recall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. All right, chapter 83. Draupadi meets the queens of Krishna. Remember, Draupadi is the wife of the Pandavas. There were many visitors who came to see Krishna, and among them were the Pandavas, headed by King Yudhishthira. After talking with the gopis and bestowing upon them the greatest benediction, Lord Krishna welcomed King Yudhishthira and other relatives who had come to see him. He first of all inquired from them whether their situation was auspicious. Actually, there's no question of ill fortune for anyone who sees the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Yet, when Lord Krishna, as a matter of etiquette, inquired from King Yudhishthira about his welfare, the king became very happy by such a reception and addressed the Lord thus: My dear Lord Krishna, great personalities and devotees in full Krishna consciousness always think of your lotus feet and remain fully satisfied by drinking the nectar of transcendental bliss. The nectar which they constantly drink sometimes comes out of their mouths and is sprinkled on others as the narration of your transcendental activities. This nectar coming from the mouth of a devotee is so powerful that if one is fortunate enough to have the opportunity to drink it, they are immediately freed from the continuous journey of birth and death. Our material existence is caused by our forgetfulness of your personality, but fortunately the darkness of forgetfulness is immediately dissipated if one is privileged to hear about your glories. Therefore, my dear Lord, where is the possibility of ill fortune for one who is constantly engaged in hearing your glorious activities? Since we are fully surrendered unto you, and have no other shelter than your lotus feet, we are always confident of our good fortune. My dear Lord, you are the ocean of unlimited knowledge and transcendental bliss. The reactions of mental concoctions in the three phases of material life, wakefulness, sleep, and deep sleep, cannot exist in Krishna consciousness. All such reactions are invalidated by the practice of Krishna consciousness. You are the ultimate destination of all liberated persons. Out of your independent will only, you have descended to this earth by the use of your own internal potency, Yogamaya. And to re-establish the Vedic principles of life, you have appeared just like an ordinary human being. Since you're the Supreme Person, there cannot be any ill luck for one who has fully surrendered to you. When Lord Krishna was busy meeting various kinds of visitors, and while they were engaged in offering prayers to the Lord, the female members of the Kuru dynasty and the Yadu dynasty took the opportunity to meet with one another and engage in talk of Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes. The first inquiry was made by Draupadi to the wives of Lord Krishna. She addressed them: My dear Rukmini, Bhadra, Jambavati, Satya, Satyabhama, Kalindi, Shaibya, Mitravinda, Lakshmana, Rohini, and all other wives of Lord Krishna. That's a different Rohini than Balaram's mother. Will you please let us know how Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accepted you as his wives and married you in pursuance of the marriage ceremonies of ordinary human beings? To this question, the chief of the queens, Rukmini Devi, replied: My dear Draupadi, it was practically a settled fact that princes like Jarasandha wanted me to marry King Shishupal. And as is usual, all the princes present during the marriage ceremony were prepared with their armor and weapons to fight with any rival who dared to stop the marriage. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead kidnapped me, the way a lion takes away a lamb from the flock. This was not, however, a very wondrous act for Lord Krishna, because anyone who claims to be a great hero or king within this world is subordinate to the lotus feet of the Lord. All kings touch their helmets to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. My dear Draupadi, it is my eternal desire that life after life I be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, who is the reservoir of all pleasure and beauty. This is my only desire and ambition in life. After this, Satyabhama began to speak. She said: My dear Draupadi, my father was very much afflicted by the death of his brother, Prasena, and he falsely accused Lord Krishna of killing his brother and stealing the Syamantika jewel, which had actually been taken by Jambavan. Lord Krishna, in order to re-establish his pure character, fought with Jambavan and rescued the Syamantika jewel, which he later delivered to my father. My father was very much ashamed and sorry for accusing Lord Krishna of his brother's death, After getting back the Siamantika jewel, he thought it wise to rectify his mistake. So although he had promised others my hand in marriage, he submitted the jewel and me at the lotus feet of Krishna. Thus I was accepted as his maidservant and wife. After this, Jambavati replied to Draupadi's question. She said, "My dear Draupadi, when Lord Krishna attacked my father, Jambavan, the king of the Rukshas, my father did not know that Lord Krishna was his former master, Lord Ramachandra, the husband of Sita. Not knowing the identity of Lord Krishna, my father fought with him continuously for 27 days. After this period, when he became fatigued, he could understand that since no one but Lord Ramachandra could defeat him, his opponent, Lord Krishna, must be the same Lord Ramachandra. He thus came to his senses and immediately returned the Siamantika jewel. Furthermore, to satisfy the Lord, he presented me to him to become his wife. In this way, I was married to the Lord, and thus my desire to be a servitor of Krishna life after life was fulfilled." After this, Kalandi said, "My dear Draupadi, I was engaged in great austerities and penances to get Lord Krishna as my husband. When he became aware of this fact, he very kindly came to me with his friend Arjuna and accepted me as his wife. Lord Krishna then took me away from the bank of the Yamuna, and since then I have been engaged in the house of Lord Krishna as a sweeper, and the Lord is treating me as his wife." After this, Mitravinda said, "My dear Draupadi, there was a great assembly of princes at my Svayamvara ceremony, the personal selection of a husband. Lord Krishna was also present in that meeting, and he accepted me as his maidservant by defeating all the princes there. He immediately took me away to Dwarka, exactly as a lion takes its prey from a pack of dogs. When I was thus taken away by Lord Krishna, my brothers wanted to fight him, and later they were defeated. Thus my desire to become the maidservant of Krishna life after life was fulfilled." After this, Satya addressed Draupadi in the same way. "My dear Draupadi, my father arranged for an assembly for my Svayamvara, and to test the strength and heroism of the prospective bridegrooms, he stipulated that they each fight with his 7 ferocious bulls, which had long, sharp horns. Many heroic prospects tried to defeat the bulls, but unfortunately they were all severely struck, and they returned to their homes as defeated invalids. When Lord Sri Krishna came and fought with the bulls, they were just like playthings for him. He captured the bulls and roped each one of them by the nostrils. Thus they came under his control, just as a goat's small kids come very easily under the control of children. My father was very much pleased and married me to Lord Krishna with great pomp, giving as my dowry many divisions of soldiers, horses, chariots, and elephants, along with hundreds of maidservants. Thus Lord Krishna brought me to his capital city, Dwarka. On the way back, he was assaulted by many princes, but Lord Krishna defeated all of them, and thus I have the privilege of serving his lotus feet as a maidservant." After this, Bhadra began to speak. She said, "My dear Draupadi, Lord Krishna is the son of my maternal uncle. Fortunately, I became attracted to his lotus feet. When my father understood these feelings of mine, he personally arranged for my marriage, inviting Lord Krishna to marry me and giving him in dowry 1 akshauhini, or division of armed forces, along with many maidservants and other royal paraphernalia. I do not know whether I shall be able to have the shelter of Lord Krishna life after life, but still I pray to the Lord that wherever I may take my birth, I may not forget my relationship with his lotus feet." Then Lakshmana said, "My dear queen, many times I heard the great sage Narada glorifying the pastimes of Lord Krishna. I became attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna when I heard Narada say that the goddess of fortune Lakshmi was attracted to his lotus feet. Since then I have been always thinking of him, and thus my attraction for him has increased. My dear queen, my father was very affectionate toward me. When he understood that I was attracted to Krishna, he devised a plan like that devised by your father. During the Svayamvara, the prospective bridegrooms had to pierce the eyes of a fish with their arrows. The difference between the competition in your Svayamvara and mine was that in yours, the fish was hanging openly on the ceiling, in clear view, but in mine, the fish was covered and could be seen only by its reflection in a pot of water. That was the special feature of my Svayamvara. The news of this device spread all over the world, and when the princes heard of it, they arrived in my father's capital city from all directions, fully equipped with armor and guided by their military instructors. Each of them desired to win me as his wife, and one after another they raised the bow and arrow left there for piercing the fish. Many could not even join the bowstring to the 2 ends of the bow, and without attempting to pierce the fish, they simply left the bow as it was and went away. Some with great difficulty drew the string from one end to the other, but being unable to tie the other end, they were suddenly knocked down by the spring-like bow. My dear queen, you will be surprised to know that at my Svayamvara meeting, there are many famous kings and heroes present. Heroes like Jarasandha, Ambashta, Shishupala, Bhimasena, Duryodhana, and Karna were, of course, able to string the bow, but they could not pierce the fish because it was covered, and they could not trace it out from the reflection. The celebrated hero of the Pandavas, Arjuna, was able to see the reflection of the fish on the water, but although with great care he traced out the location of the fish and shot an arrow, he did not pierce the fish in the right spot. But his arrow at least touched the fish, and so he proved himself better than all the other princes. All the princes who tried to pierce the target were disappointed, being baffled in their attempts, and some candidates even left the palace without making an attempt. But when at last Lord Krishna took up the bow, he was able to tie the bowstring very easily, just as a child plays with a toy. He placed the arrow, and looking only once at the reflection of the fish in the water, he shot the arrow, and the pierced fish immediately fell down. This victory of Lord Krishna was accomplished at noon, during the moment called Abhijit, which is astronomically calculated as auspicious. At that time, the vibration of Jai, Jai was heard all over the world, and from the sky came sounds of drums beaten by the denizens of heaven. Great demigods were overwhelmed with joy and showered flowers on the earth. At that time, I entered the arena of competition, and my ankle bells on my legs sounded very melodious as I walked. I was nicely dressed with new silken garments. Flowers decorated my hair, and because of Lord Krishna's victory, I was in ecstatic joy and smiling very pleasingly. I carried in my hands a golden necklace bedecked with jewels, which glittered at intervals. My curling hair encircled my face, which shone with a bright luster due to the reflection of my various earrings. My eyes blinking, I first observed all the princes present, and when I reached my lord, I very slowly placed the golden necklace on his neck. As I've already informed you, from the very beginning my mind was attracted by Lord Krishna, and thus I considered the garlanding of the Lord my great victory. As soon as I placed my garland on the neck of the Lord, there sounded immediately the combined vibration of mridangas, partaha, and anaka drums, conch shells, kettle drums, and other instruments, causing a tumultuous sound. And while the music played, expert male and female dancers began to dance, and singers began to sing sweetly. My dear Draupadi, when I accepted Lord Krishna as my worshipable husband, and he accepted me as his maidservant, there was a tumultuous roaring among the disappointed princes. All of them were very agitated because of their lusty desires, but without caring for them, my husband, in his form as the four-headed Narayana, immediately took me on his chariot, which was drawn by 4 excellent horses. Expecting opposition from the princes, he armored himself and took up his bow named Sharanga, and then our celebrated driver, Daduka, drove the beautiful chariot without a moment's delay toward the city of Dwarka. Thus, in the presence of all the princes, I was carried away very quickly, exactly as a deer is carried away from the flock by a lion. Some of the princes, however, wanted to check our progress, and thus, equipped with proper weapons, they opposed us, just as dogs try to oppose the progressive march of a lion. At that time, due to the arrows released by the Sharanga bow of Lord Krishna, some of the princes lost their hands, some of them lost their legs, some lost their heads and their lives, and others fled from the battlefield. The Supreme Personality of God had then entered the most celebrated city of the universe, Dwarka, and as he entered the city, he appeared like the shining sun. The whole city of Dwarka was profusely decorated on that occasion. There were so many flags and festoons and gates all over Dwarka that the sunshine could not even enter the city. I have already told you that my father was very affectionate to me. So when he saw that my desire had been fulfilled by my getting Lord Krishna as my husband, in great happiness he began to distribute to friends and relatives various kinds of gifts, such as valuable garments, ornaments, bedsteads, and sitting carpets. Lord Krishna is always self-sufficient, yet my father, out of his own accord, offered my husband a dowry consisting of riches, soldiers, elephants, chariots, horses, and many rare and valuable weapons. He presented all these to the Lord with great enthusiasm. My dear Queen, at that time I could guess that in my previous life I must have performed some wonderfully pious activity, and as a result I can in this life be one of the maidservants in the house of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When all the principal queens of Lord Krishna had finished their statements, Rohini, as the representative of the other 16,000 queens, began to narrate the incident of their becoming wives of Krishna. My dear Queen, when Bhaumasura was conquering all the world, he collected wherever possible all the beautiful daughters of the kings, and kept us arrested within his palace. When news of our imprisonment reached Lord Krishna, he fought with Bhaumasura and released us. Lord Krishna killed Bhaumasura and all his soldiers, and although he had no need to accept even one wife, he nevertheless, by our request, married all 16,000 of us. My dear Queen, our only qualification was that we were always thinking of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, which is the way to release oneself from the bondage of repeated birth and death. My dear Queen Draupadi, please take it from us that we are not after any opulence, such as a kingdom, an empire, or a position of heavenly enjoyment. We do not want to enjoy such material opulences, nor do we desire to achieve the yogic perfections, nor the exalted post of Lord Brahma. Nor do we want any of the different kinds of liberation, Sarupya, Salokya, Sarshti, Samipya, or Sayujya. We are not at all attracted by any of these opulences. Our only ambition is to bear on our heads, life after life, the dust particles attached to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The goddess of fortune also desires to keep that dust on her breasts, along with fragrant saffron. We simply desire this dust, which accumulates underneath the lotus feet of Krishna, as he travels on the land of Vrindavan as a cowherd boy. The gopis especially, and also the cowherd men, and the Aborigine tribeswomen always desire to become the grass and straw on the streets of Vrindavan, to be trampled on by the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. My dear Queen, we wish to remain as such, life after life, without any other desire. Shri Krishna Book Ki Jai. Hari Bol. And in the chat, Kishore Gopi is saying Subhadra's mother is Rohini, and her father is Vasudeva. Rohini is one of Vasudev's wives. That's one of his co-wives with Devaki. Rohini is the mother of Balaram. She is the half-sister of both Krishna and Balaram. As Vasudeva had two wives, Devaki and Rohini gave birth to Subhadra and Balaram. I guess that makes her the half-sister of Krishna and the full sister of Balaram, because she has the same mom, I think. Thanks for that background. Running a background check. Running an APB. All patrol broadcast on Subhadra. Little tidbit. If I'm not mistaken, when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, whenever he attended Rath Yatra festival, he sat in Rohini's cart, Subhadra's cart. And so to this day, when we have Rath Yatra, his picture is always put deliberately on Subhadra's cart. So, taking shelter of the energy of the Lord. So there it is. Any comments, questions, reflections on this chapter before we jump into 85? Or 84, actually. Let's have one reflection. Basically, it was the queens. Well, Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas, she wants to hear from the queens how they all became married to Krishna. And they're like, I was taken by how humble they all are. They're all comparing themselves to sweepers and maids, although they're actually like accepted by Krishna as a wife. They all have children with him. They all live in a palace with him. He dotes on them.
I've noticed that too, that they refer to themselves as maidservants, even
Yeah,
though they're queens, but they all say, I was a maidservant.
yeah. Any other reflections? Okay. Oh, did you want to say something, Pam? You're
Oh,
unmuted.
no, I'm sorry. I forgot to mute again.
Okay. Let's go to chapter 84. Sacrificial ceremonies performed by Vasudeva. Among the women present at Kurukshetra during the solar eclipse were Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, and the queens of many other kings, as well as the gopis from Vrindavan. When the different queens of Lord Krishna were submitting their statements as to how they had been married and accepted by Lord Krishna as his wives, all the female members of the Kuru dynasty were struck with wonder. They were filled with admiration at how all the queens of Krishna were attached to him with love and affection. When they heard about the queens' intensity of love and affection for Krishna, they could not check their eyes from filling with tears. While the women were engaged in conversations among themselves, and the men were similarly engaged in conversation, there arrived from all directions almost all the important sages and ascetics, who had come for the purpose of seeing Lord Krishna and Balaram. Chief among the sages were Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage Narada, Chyavana, Devala, Asita, Vishvamitra, Shitananda, Bharadvaj, Gautama, Lord Parshuram, along with his disciples Vasishta, Galava, Bhrigu, Pulastya, Kashyapa, Atri, Markandeya, Brihaspati, Dvita, Trita, Ekata, the four Kumara sons of Brahma, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar, Angira, Agastya, Yagnavalkya, and Vamadeva. As soon as the sages and ascetics arrived, all the kings, including Maharaj Yudhishthir and the other Pandavas, and Lord Krishna and Balaram immediately got up from their seats and offered respects by bowing down to the universally respected sages. After this, the sages were properly welcomed by being offered seats and water for washing their feet. Palatable fruits, garlands of flowers, incense, and sandalwood pulp were presented. And all the kings, led by Krishna and Balaram, worshipped the sages according to the Vedic rules and regulations. When all the sages were comfortably seated, Lord Krishna, who descended for the protection of religion, began to address them on behalf of all the kings. When Krishna began to speak, all became silent, being eager to hear and understand his welcoming words to the sages. Lord Krishna spoke thus: "All glory to the assembled sages and ascetics. Today we all feel that our lives have become successful. Today we have achieved the desired goal of life because we now see face to face all the exalted, liberated sages and ascetics whom even the great demigods in the heavens desire to see. Persons who are neophytes in devotional service and who simply offer their respectful obeisances to the deity in the temple, but cannot realize that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, and those who simply worship different demigods for fulfillment of their own lusty desires are unable to understand the importance of these sages. They cannot take advantage of receiving these sages by seeing them with their eyes, by touching their lotus feet, by inquiring about their welfare, or by diligently worshipping them. Neophyte devotees or religionists cannot understand the importance of great Mahatmas. They go to the temple as a matter of formality and pay their respectful obeisances unto the deity. But when one is promoted to the next platform of transcendental consciousness, one can understand the importance of Mahatmas and devotees, and in that stage one tries to please them. Therefore, Lord Krishna said that the neophyte cannot understand the importance of great sages, devotees, or ascetics. Lord Krishna continued, "One cannot purify themselves merely by traveling to holy places of pilgrimage and taking a bath there, or by seeing the demigods' forms in the temples. But if one happens to meet a great devotee, a Mahatma, who is a representative of the personality of Godhead, one is immediately purified. To become purified, one is enjoined to worship the fire, the sun, the moon, the earth, the water, the air, the sky, and the mind. By worshipping all the elements and their predominating deities, one can gradually become free from the influence of envy. But all the sins of an envious person can be nullified immediately, simply by serving a great soul. My dear revered sages and respectable kings, you can take it from me that a person who accepts this material body made of 3 elements, mucus, bile, and air, as their own self, who considers their family and relatives their own, who accepts material things as worshipable, or who visits holy places of pilgrimage just to take a bath there, but never associates with great personalities, sages, and Mahatmas. Such a person, even though in the form of a human being, is nothing but an animal, like an ass." When the Supreme Authority, Lord Krishna, was thus speaking with great gravity, all the sages and ascetics remained in dead silence. They were amazed upon hearing him speak the absolute philosophy of life in such a concise way. Unless one is very much advanced in knowledge, one thinks their body to be their self, their family members to be their own, and the land of their birth to be worshipable. From this concept of life, the modern ideology of nationalism has sprung up. Lord Krishna condemned such ideas, and he also condemned persons who take the trouble to go to holy places of pilgrimage just to take a bath and come back without taking the opportunity to associate with the great devotees and Mahatmas living there. Such persons are compared to the most foolish animal, the ass. All those who heard considered the speech of Lord Krishna for some time, and thus they concluded that Lord Krishna was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the role of an ordinary human being, who is forced to take a certain type of body as a result of the reactions of his own past deeds. He was assuming this pastime as an ordinary human being to teach the people in general how they should live for perfection of the human mission. Having concluded that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sages addressed him thus: "Dear Lord, we, the leaders of human society, are supposed to possess the proper philosophy of life, yet we are bewildered by the spell of your external energy. We're surprised to see your behavior, which is just like that of an ordinary human being, which conceals your real identity as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we therefore consider your pastimes to be all wonderful. Our dear Lord, by your own energy you create, maintain, and annihilate the whole cosmic manifestation of different names and forms. In the same way that the earth creates many forms of stone, trees, and other varieties of names and forms, and yet remains the same. Although you create varieties of material manifestations through your energy, you are unaffected by all those actions. Our dear Lord, we are simply stunned to see your wondrous acts. Although you are transcendental to this entire material creation and are the Supreme Lord, and the supersoul of all living entities, you appear on this earth by your internal potency to protect your devotees and destroy the miscreants. By such an appearance, you re-establish the principles of eternal religion, which human society forgets by long association with the material energy. Our dear Lord, you are the creator of the social orders and spiritual statuses of human society, according to quality and work. And when these orders are misguided by unscrupulous persons, you appear and set them right. Dear Lord, the Vedic knowledge is the representation of your pure heart. Austerity, study of the Vedas, and meditative trances lead to different realizations of yourself in your manifested and non-manifested aspects. The entire phenomenal world is but a manifestation of your impersonal energy, but you yourself, as the original personality of Godhead, are not manifested there. You are the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Brahman. Persons who are situated in Brahminical culture, therefore, can understand the truth about your transcendental form. Thus, you always hold the Brahmins in respect, and you are considered to be the topmost of all followers of Brahminical culture. You are therefore known as Brahmanya Deva. Our dear Lord, you are the last word in good fortune and the last resort of all saintly persons. Therefore, we all consider that we have achieved the perfection of our life, education, austerity, and acquisition of transcendental knowledge by meeting you. Factually, you are the ultimate goal of all transcendental achievements. Our dear Lord, there is no end to your unlimited knowledge. Your form is transcendental, eternally existing in full bliss and knowledge. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Soul. Being covered by the spell of your internal potency, Yogamaya, you are now temporarily concealing your unlimited potencies, but still we can understand your exalted position, and therefore all of us offer you our respectful obeisances. Dear Lord, you are enjoying your pastimes in the role of a human being, concealing your real character of transcendental opulence. Therefore, none of the kings present here, even the members of the other dynasty who constantly mingle with you, eat with you, and sit with you, can understand that you are the original cause of all causes, the soul of everyone, the original cause of all creation. When a person dreams at night, hallucinatory figures created by the dream are accepted as real, and the imaginary dream body is accepted as one's real body. For the time being, one forgets that besides the body created in hallucination, there's another, real body in their awakened state. Similarly, in the awakened state also, the bewildered conditioned soul considers sense enjoyment to be real happiness. By the process of enjoying the senses of the material body, the spirit soul is covered, and their consciousness becomes materially contaminated. It is due to material consciousness that one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. All great mystic yogis endeavor to revive their Krishna consciousness by mature practice of the yoga system, just to understand your lotus feet. They meditate upon your transcendental form to counteract their accumulated sinful reactions. It is said that the water of the Ganges can vanquish volumes of a person's sinful reactions, but the Ganges water is glorious only due to your lotus feet. The Ganges water flows as perspiration from the lotus feet of your Lordship, and we are all so fortunate that today we have been able to see your lotus feet directly. Dear Lord, we are all surrendered souls, devotees of your Lordship. Therefore, please be kind and bestow your causeless mercy upon us. We know well that persons who have become liberated by constant engagement in your devotional service are no longer contaminated by the material modes of nature. Thus, they have become eligible to be promoted to the kingdom of God in the spiritual world. After first offering prayers to Lord Krishna, the assembled sages wanted to take permission from King Dhritarashtra and King Yudhishthir and then depart for their respective ashrams. At that time, however, Vasudeva, the father of Lord Krishna and the most celebrated of all pious men, approached the sages and with great humility offered his respects by falling down at their feet. Vasudeva said, "My dear great sages, you are more respected than the demigods. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances to you. I wish for you to accept my one request, if you so desire. I shall consider it a great blessing if you kindly explain the supreme fruit of activity by which one can counteract the reactions of all other activities." The great sage Narada was the leader of all the sages present. Therefore he began to speak. My dear sages, he said, it is not very difficult to understand that because of his great goodness and simplicity, Vasudeva, who has become the father of the personality of Godhead by accepting Krishna as his son, is inclined to ask us about his welfare. It is said that familiarity breeds contempt. As such, Vasudeva, having Krishna as his son, does not regard Krishna with awe and veneration. Sometimes it is seen that persons living on the bank of the Ganges do not consider the Ganges very important, and they go very far away to take their baths at a place of pilgrimage. There is no need for Vasudeva to ask us for instruction when Lord Krishna is personally present, because his knowledge is never second in any circumstance. His knowledge is not affected by the process of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, nor is it ever influenced by any agency beyond himself, nor is it agitated by the interactions of the material qualities, or changed in the course of time. His transcendental form is full of knowledge which never becomes agitated by ignorance, pride, attachment, envy, or sense enjoyment. His knowledge is never subjected to the laws of karma regarding pious or impious activities, nor is it influenced by the three modes of material energy. No one is greater than or equal to him, and because he is the supreme authority, the personality of Godhead. Because he is the supreme authority, the personality of Godhead. The ordinary conditioned human being may think that the conditioned soul, who is covered by his materialistic senses, mind, and intelligence, is equal to Krishna, but Lord Krishna is just like the sun, which, although it sometimes may appear to be so, is never covered by the cloud, snow, or fog, or by other planets during an eclipse. When the eyes of less intelligent men are covered by such influences, they think the sun to be invisible. Similarly, persons who are influenced by senses addicted to material enjoyment cannot have a clear vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a nice analogy because during an eclipse, or when the sun is covered by a cloud, we can say the sun is covered, but it's not. Like if you rise above the cloud, you go beyond the eclipse, the sun is right there. It's continuing to exist in its unchanged form. Continuing. The sages, let's see. The sages present then began to address Vasudeva in the presence of Lord Krishna, Balaram, and many other kings. And as requested by him, they gave their instructions. Quote, to counteract the reactions of fruitive activities and the desires impelling one to fruitive activities, one must with faith and devotion execute the prescribed sacrifices meant for worshipping Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the beneficiary of the results of all sacrificial performances. Great personalities and sages who are able to see everything clearly through the eyes of the revealed scriptures and who possess vision of the three phases of time, namely past, present, and future, have unanimously recommended that to purify the dust of material contamination accumulated in the heart, and to clear the path of liberation and thereby achieve transcendental bliss, one must please Lord Vishnu. For everyone living as a householder in one of the higher social orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, this worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, who is known as Purushottama, the original person, is recommended as the only auspicious path. All conditioned souls within this material world have deep-rooted desires to lord it over the resources of material nature. Everyone wants to accumulate riches. Everyone wants to enjoy life to the greatest extent. Everyone wants a wife, home, and children, and everyone wants to become happy in this world and be elevated to the heavenly planets in the next life. But these desires are the causes of one's material bondage. Therefore, to get liberation from this bondage, one has to sacrifice his honestly earned riches for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The only process to counteract all sorts of material desires is to engage oneself in the devotional service of Lord Vishnu. In this way, a self-controlled person, even while remaining in householder life, should give up the three kinds of material desires, namely the desire for the acquisition of material opulences, for the enjoyment of wife and children, and for elevation to higher planets. Eventually, they should give up householder life and accept the renounced order, engaging themselves completely in the devotional service of the Lord. Everyone, even if born in a higher status as a Brahmin, Kshatriya, or Vaishya, is certainly indebted to the demigods, to the sages, to the forefathers, and to other living entities. And in order to liquidate all these debts, one has to perform sacrifices, study the Vedic literature, and generate children in religious householder life. If somehow one accepts the renounced order of life without liquidating these debts, they certainly fall down from their position. Today you have already liquidated your debts to your forefathers and the sages. Now, by performing sacrifices, you can free yourself from indebtedness to the demigods and thus take complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My dear Vasudeva, certainly you have already performed many pious activities in your previous lives. Otherwise, how could you be the father of Krishna and Balaram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Saintly Vasudeva, after hearing all the sages, offered his respectful obeisances to the lotus feet. In this way, he pleased the sages, and then he requested them to perform the yagyas. When the sages were selected as priests of the sacrifice, they in turn induced Vasudeva to collect the required paraphernalia for executing the yagyas in that place of pilgrimage. When Vasudeva was thus persuaded to start the performance of yagya, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths, dressed themselves very nicely, decorated themselves beautifully, and garlanded themselves with lotus flowers. Vasudeva's wives, dressed with nice garments and ornaments and golden necklaces, approached the arena of sacrifice, carrying in their hands the required articles to offer in the sacrifice. When everything was complete, there was heard the vibration of mridangas, conch shells, kettle drums, and other musical instruments. Professional dancers, both male and female, began to dance. The sutas and magatas, who were professional singers, began to offer prayers by singing, and the Gandharvas and their wives, whose voices were very sweet, began to sing many auspicious songs. Vasudeva anointed his eyes with black cosmetic, smeared butter over his body, and then, along with his 18 wives, headed by Devaki, sat before the priests to be purified by the Abhisheka ceremony. While the ceremony was being observed strictly according to the principles of the scriptures, Vasudeva resembled the moon, encircled by stars. Because he was being initiated for the sacrifice, he was dressed in a deerskin, but all his wives were dressed with very nice saris, bangles, necklaces, ankle bells, earrings, and many other ornaments. Vasudeva looked very beautiful surrounded by his wives, exactly like the King of Heaven when he performed such sacrifices. At that time, when Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram, along with their wives, children, and relatives, sat down in that great sacrificial arena, it appeared that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present along with all the living entities and multi-energies that are part of him. We have heard from the Shastras that Lord Krishna has multi-energies in parts and parcels, but now in that sacrificial arena, all could actually experience how the Supreme Personality of Godhead eternally exists with his different energies. At that time, Lord Krishna appeared as Lord Narayana, and Lord Balaram appeared as Sankarshana, the reservoir of all living entities. Vasudeva satisfied Lord Vishnu by performing different kinds of sacrifices, such as Jyotishtoma and Darsha Purnamasa. Some of these yajnas are called Prakrita, and some of them are known as Shaurya Satra or Vaikrita. Thereafter, the other sacrifices known as Agnihotra were also performed, and the prescribed articles were offered in the proper way. Thus, Lord Vishnu was pleased. The ultimate purpose of offering oblations and sacrifice is to please Lord Vishnu, but in this age of Kali, it is very difficult to collect the different articles required for offering sacrifices. People have neither the means to collect the required paraphernalia, nor the necessary knowledge or tendency to offer such sacrifices. Therefore, in this age of Kali, when people are mostly unfortunate, full of anxieties, and disturbed by various kinds of calamities, the only sacrifice recommended is the performance of Sankirtan Yagya. Worshipping Lord Chaitanya by the Sankirtan Yagya is the only recommended process in this age. After the performance of the different sacrifices, Vasudeva offered ample riches, clothing, ornaments, cows, land, and maidservants to the priests. Thereafter, all the wives of Vasudeva took their avaprita baths and performed the part of the sacrificial duties known as the Patni Sangyaja. After finishing the offering with all the required paraphernalia, they all took together their baths in the lakes constructed by Parshuram, which are known as the Rama Hruda. After Vasudeva and his wives took their baths, all the garments and ornaments they had worn were distributed to the subordinate persons engaged in singing, dancing, and similar activities. We may note that the performance of sacrifice necessitates profuse distribution of riches. Charity is offered to the priests and the Brahmins in the beginning, and used garments and ornaments are offered in charity to the subordinate assistants after the performance of the sacrifice. After offering the used articles to the singers and reciters, Vasudeva and his wives, dressed with new ornaments and garments, fed everyone very sumptuously, from the Brahmins down to the dogs. After this, all the friends, family members, wives, and children of Vasudeva assembled together, along with all the kings and members of the Vidarbha, Koshala, Kuru, Kashi, Kekaya, and Srinjaya dynasties. The priests, demigods, people in general, the forefathers, the ghosts, and the charanas were all sufficiently remunerated by being offered ample gifts and respectful honor. Then all the persons assembled there took permission from Lord Krishna, the husband of the goddess of fortune, and while glorifying the perfection of the sacrifice made by Vasudeva, they departed to their respective homes. At that time, when King Dhritarashtra, Vidura, Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjuna, Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Kunti, Nakula, Sahadev, Narada, Lord Vyasadeva, and many other relatives and kinsmen were about to depart, they felt separation, and therefore embraced each and every member of the Yadu dynasty with great feeling. Many others who were assembled in that sacrificial arena also departed. After this, Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram, along with King Ugrasena, satisfied the inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd man, by profusely offering all kinds of gifts to worship them and please them. Out of their great feelings of friendship, the inhabitants of Vrindavan remained there for a considerable time with the members of the Yadu dynasty. After performing this sacrifice, Vasudeva felt so satisfied that there was no limit to his happiness. All the members of his family were with him, and in their presence he caught hold of the hands of Nanda Maharaj and addressed him thus: My dear brother, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has created a great tie of bondage known as the bondage of love and affection. I think that it is very difficult. It is a very difficult job for even the great sages and saintly persons to cut such a tie of love. My dear brother, you have exhibited feelings of love for me that I was not able to return. I think, therefore, that I am ungrateful. You have behaved exactly as is characteristic of saintly persons, but I shall never be able to repay you. I have no means to repay you for your friendly dealings. Nevertheless, I am confident that our tie of love will never break. Our friendship must ever continue in spite of my inability to repay you. I hope you will excuse me for this inability. My dear brother, in the beginning, due to my being imprisoned, I could never serve you as a friend. And although at the present moment I am very opulent, because of my material prosperity, I have become blind. I therefore cannot satisfy you properly even at this time. My dear brother, you are so nice and gentle that you offer all respect to others, but don't care for any respect for yourself. A person seeking auspicious progress in life must avoid possessing too much material opulence, so that they will not become blind and puffed up, and they should take care of their friends and relatives. When Vasudeva was speaking to Nanda Maharaj in this way, he was influenced by a great feeling for the friendship of Nanda Maharaj, and the beneficial activities executed by King Nanda on his behalf. As such, his eyes filled with tears and began to cry. Nanda Maharaj, desiring to please his friend Vasudeva and being affectionately bound with love for Lord Krishna and Balaram, passed 3 months in their association. At the end of this time, all the members of the Yadu dynasty tried to please the inhabitants of Vrindavan to their heart's content. The members of the Yadu dynasty tried to satisfy Nanda Maharaj and his associates by offering them clothing, ornaments, and many other valuable articles, and they all became fully satisfied. Vasudeva, Ugrasena, Lord Krishna, Lord Balaram, Uddhava, and all other members of the Yadu dynasty presented their individual gifts to Nanda Maharaj and his associates. After Nanda Maharaj received these farewell presentations, he, along with his associates, started for Vrajbhumi, Vrindavan. The minds of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, however, remained with Krishna and Balaram, and therefore all of them started for Vrindavan without their minds. When the members of the Vrishni family saw all their friends and visitors departing, they observed that the rainy season was approaching, and they thus returned to Dvarka. They were fully satisfied, for they regarded Krishna as everything. When they returned to Dvarka, they described with great satisfaction the sacrifice performed by Vasudeva, their meeting with various friends and well-wishers, and various other incidents that had occurred during their travels in the places of pilgrimage. Shri Krishna Book Ki Jai. All right. Let's have some reflections. In fact, since we're not going to get through the next chapter today, let's take any reflections on anything you heard today.
I really liked the section where it made me think, where it says self-controlled persons, even while remaining in householder life, should give up the 3 kinds of material desires, namely the desire for the acquisition of material opulences, for the enjoyment of wife and children, and for elevation to higher planets. I thought that was interesting because the idea that, oh, if I am in Krishna consciousness, I'm longing for that elevation kind of thing. But here it's saying, live here and do your job as you need to, your prescribed duty here in all things. Don't have your head in the clouds, basically.
Yeah. Also, when it's talking about higher planets, the context there is it means higher material planets, like
Okay.
higher heavenly planets, where it can have greater sense gratification, longer life, more enjoyment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's still a material desire. It's not a material desire to want to go back to Krishna,
Right.
to go to Vrindavan,
Right.
to go to the spiritual world.
But if it's to possess, then it's mine. I'm going to make it mine. That possessiveness that can come from
right,
material lust. No.
yeah.
Yeah.
Practicing bhakti, even when we have material desires, it progressively purifies us of those desires. So we function in an attached position, taking care of our dependents, taking care of Krishna's wealth in the form of different kinds of opulences, possessions, and so forth. and we practice bhakti side by side. And by that, we become detached. That doesn't mean we leave them. It means we serve them in a detached mode. The internals change. The externals may or may not. Thank you. More reflections. What stood out from our readings today?
Something that stood out to me was from the chapter before the one we just read, when Krishna was addressing the gopis, and he said something about how he never intended to leave them or to separate from them, but it was like ordained or something like
Yeah, it was providence.
it was providence. And I was thinking about how we spoke briefly about it last class too, around like how no matter what it is that we're really desiring or wanting, we can't like micromanage our sort of eternal experience that, in some ways are the unfolding. Like there's karma, and there's also like there's some preordained um nature to what's happening in our lives as well.
Right. And there's also Krishna's will. I mean,
Krishna as well.
he doesn't say it explicitly, but it was actually by his will that he leave Vrindavan, even though he doesn't want to, but it's actually like he's doing all these other things that are important, and also he's creating more separation from that for them that heightens their love. So even for devotees who are not exactly necessarily like subject to karma in the same way anymore, having surrendered and functioning, there may be Krishna is independent. He can manifest what he likes.
Right.
Yeah.
And how interesting though, like you just said, like even though he didn't want to leave Vrindavan, he did because of it. Like he even did because he knew he needed to for all of these,
Yeah.
all the Leela that he was facilitating.
He also has to do stuff he doesn't want to do.
Even Krishna does, just like we need to. I guess we're the shadow side of we're the ultimately even he does that, but so of course we are also going to need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice reflection. Any other takeaways, reflections? Anything here? Let's have one more.
I also just love how the end of this chapter, Vyasadeva and Nanda are hugging
Oh, Vasudev, Ananda, yeah. It's sweet.
dads.
Remember like yeah, dads. Remember like way, way, way long ago when Vasudev and Devaki had Krishna, and then Vasudev brought Krishna over, and then Vasudev went to Vrindavan. Um, no, I think Nanda came to Mathura to pay taxes to Kamsa, and they caught up. And Vasudev was like, "How is?" He didn't want to reveal like the secret, but he's like, "How are Krishna and Balaram doing?" Um, and Nanda was like, "Good, this and that." But Vasudev was thinking, Kamsa is such a rascal that he's gonna send something. You should go back. Just make sure they're okay. And as soon as Nanda went back, that's when he came upon the Putana scene. Putana was dead, a giant like shape-shifting ogress. Like Krishna's like playing on her naked body, having like killed her. And he's like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And when he got there, he said, "Actually, wow, Vasudeva must be very perceptive. He must be like a very intelligent person. He knew that I should be very careful with Krishna." Because that's like the beginning of their story. They were old friends, and their whole life, how Vasudeva like placed Krishna and Balaram to be raised by Nanda, and so there's a lot of love there. Yeah, they stayed with each other for 3 months. It said. Shy. Any more reflections, questions, comments? Allison?
was just reflecting back to chapter, I think it was 84,
Hmm.
that he just tells the gopis to accept everything with a philosophical attitude, and that how
Yeah.
applicable and it can be utilized by all of us to, just remember that he's present everywhere, even when he's not with them, and just that he's there telling them. So for us, being so far removed is a nice way to help think about Krishna, for
Yeah,
me at least.
definitely.
If the gopis can do it.
Yeah, and this chanting is a real benediction for us. It's just such a practical way to experience Krishna's presence. I mean, he's in everything, right? He's even in matter, but um, it's one thing to like think, oh yeah, the particles of this cup are like just Krishna's external energy. And it's another thing to chant his names and have him be personally dancing in your heart and tongue. It's a very special privilege, and that chanting process is actually what supports us to actually become Krishna conscious enough to be able to see the world with that vision. That philosophically, I'm never separate from Krishna. He's got the whole world in his hands, the song says, right? Like everything is contained with him. There's no possibility at any time, even in our dreams, of being separate from Krishna. Even in our worst nightmares, those nightmares are just aspects of his energy. We're completely in the womb of the Lord's energy. We are never separate from him. And this chanting process it's the umbilical cord. It's what keeps us actually really, truly nourished. All right, we made it. Howdy bol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Krishna Book ki jai, Bhakti House Sangha and Beyond ki jai. Good to see all of you live. Good to see, I'll see you all on the WhatsApp. Sending our love out to the YouTube crew. Anyone listening or watching later, we love you. And Hare Krishna. And so for this week, please read the rest of chapter 82, 83, 84. And we didn't start 85 yet. Yeah. And leave any reflections in the chat. We're almost done. We only have 2 classes left. Amazingly, we're going to finish the Krishna book, which is going to require some little finagling. The 87th chapter is the longest chapter in the entire Krishna book, and it's not close. If you look at it, it's gigantic. There's actually no way I can read it in time. I think probably what I'm going to do is not read that chapter and maybe just read it separately and record myself. I mean, it's like 400 pages or something. Like, look at it in your book. It's a long stretch because it's the total philosophy of Krishna consciousness. It's pretty long in the Bhagavatam, but Krishna, it's not actually that long in the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada himself chooses to expand on the philosophy in that chapter in the Krishna book very, very thickly. It actually it explains all the other philosophical ideas of the Vedas. It completely establishes personalism. It's almost like you could write a course based on that chapter. It's quite thick and very heady and wonderful, but we're not probably going to have time to read it together. But don't let that stop you. You have to read it. I don't want to oversell it, but you need to do that. Please. And Hare Krishna. One way or another, we'll get to chapter 90 and finish the 10th canto Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Now let's offer a respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, can fulfill the desires of everyone, and are full of compassion for all the fallen conditioned souls. Jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha, kripasindhubhyevacha, patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.